Welcome to Bold Moves, the show spotlighting fearless trailblazers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries forging new paths across Arizona and beyond. Each episode, we dive deep into uplifting stories, game-changing strategies, and the unstoppable spirit powering real transformation. Whether you're launching a business, chasing a dream, or reshaping your community, get ready to unleash your boldness. Join your host, Matt Torres, as he sparks your imagination, amplify action, and help you thrive. So buckle up and let's ignite your boldest moves yet.
All righty, we are back with the Bold Moves podcast, and I have a very special guest. I have Elizabeth Silva here with me today. And Elizabeth Silva, she is representing her brand Silva Lining, which is really cool. I love that, by the way. But she has a wealth of knowledge with health and wellness, and I'm really excited for her to get to share her journey, her story. But Elizabeth, Liz,
Hi,
would you like to,
Matt.
hey, how's it going?
Hi, Matt. I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for asking me to participate in this. I'm excited to share, and it's definitely, we're evolving and, growing through it. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool because it's been like a year. I think when you first came in, it's been a year since I've seen you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But just so all of the listeners know, BNI again strikes again. Yeah, so I'll fill in some of the audience a little bit. We first met in a BNI group that we were trying to launch about probably a year or so ago, probably a little bit more.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't launch. Just couldn't quite get the numbers there because the metrics, the way BNI has it set up, right? You need like 17 to 20 metrics to actually launch, and we just couldn't get there.
Yeah, close.
I know, we were so close, and actually the new group that I'm in, because Nate, he was running everything, and he was telling us that a lot of groups don't form. They start, and it's actually a common theme.
Yes.
And it's just very difficult, but. Yeah, and we tried to start our own afterwards and it just kind of didn't work out, but we each found a BNI home, and you saw my podcast and here you are, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But Bold News Podcast, we talk about, our journey, our bold moves in life, risks that we've taken to better ourselves, our lives, our business, and it's just a very interesting concept. So I'm really glad that you're here to kind of talk about that bold journey.
Yeah, this was timely. It was timely because, we've had some shifts happening.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be here.
Very cool. So let's kick things off with a moment that really captures the intensity of your journey. So what's one dramatic or say pivotal moment that just sticks with you to this day? Something that made you just stop in your tracks?
Well, I take a lot of lessons from my kids, from being a mother. So many lessons from there. I think, you and I spoke briefly of, our kids at one point, and I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. And on that journey, I had to learn how to be flexible and how to just cross boundaries and put myself in spaces, and so that's just kind of carried over with me as I, think and want to start growing as an entrepreneur and growing a brand and growing our business, and so definitely, just expanding, it's a scary thing, but I always take those lessons with me, just go do it.
How old's your kid?
He's 20. He will be 26 in June.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been a long.
Yeah. No, I think I remember we were talking about that because my son, again, also on the spectrum, and it's interesting though because when you tell people that and they interact with him, they're like, really? And it's so interesting because I didn't really understand autism until I really started experiencing it with my son and going through all the material and even realizing, even I have, I know I'm somewhere along that spectrum because everything that my son has kind of encountered, I have experienced and kind of understand what he's going through. But it's interesting because he's super techie like me. He likes robotics, and he's like really wanting to get into like the coding and even like when I do video editing, he's like, "Oh, can you give me a video to edit?" And I'm like,
great.
so he has an old cell phone. There's like CapCut on there, and I'm like, "Here, go to town."
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
creating some funny stuff.
yeah. Just let them loose,
Yeah,
and they're amazing.
yeah.
They're amazing. So
It's really cool, but
yeah.
that's wild. Is your son into anything techie or anything?
Oh yeah, he is. Video games are his jam, and he's so good at them. And he's actually, it's funny when he was little, my husband and we would just be very sad and cry about how his social life was going to look for him when he grew up. And that boy has a bigger social life than me, my husband, and my younger son put together. But he really loves video games, and he's broken through like some of these YouTubers and has become part of their like little posse. And so it's really cool. But he has like this, he doesn't like to hear himself speak or see himself on video. So, you with autism, right? It's little steps, getting them to buy in to whatever it is that you want them to do. And so I tell him, you have such talent there, and we got to use that. We got to do something bigger with that. And so we're just taking him through the steps, but he's so good. I think he could give lessons.
Wow, that's awesome.
And he sees like 5 steps ahead, right? When I see 1 step here, I'm here, I'm playing checkers and he's playing chess.
Yeah.
The brain just works so differently for them.
What game is he playing?
It's all the Mario. There's so many different Marios I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
But he creates like the levels and the games, and he gets really he creates these things, these games. I guess there's a software for it that he uses, and he's actually creating games, and then he has these really top heavy players try to beat it, so he creates this challenging, paths it's really cool. So it's a skill that's there. We just kind of have to, develop it and hone in on it, so
that's cool.
Yeah.
He's actually like developing the games. That's really neat.
Yeah.
My kid's into Minecraft, and they've got things in there where you can like program stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, the Switch does this and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's so cool.
But before you kind of really took a leap, let's kind of rewind a little bit. What did your life and work look like before you made that decision to kind of take that jump?
Oh man, it was get on the freeway, get into Phoenix, go to an 8 to 5, 8 to 5 job, and just, do it again 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, had a good weekend. And I was, ironically, I was in the health field, with that. So I think everything was kind of pointing towards where I'm at now. I just couldn't see it then. But it was just a very blah existence that I was having, just with that 8 to 5, and didn't really feel challenged and excitement. And, I didn't feel like I was really serving, so just, your basic 8 to 5, and, and then the bold move happened.
Yeah.
It was a progression,
I think that's funny. Like the 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever the standard punch in, punch out thing tends to get a lot of people. It's funny. Most people that I talk to, it's that mundane thing that's pushing people into, taking these directions. And it's like, wonder if the norm needs to change, maybe. I don't know, but I know I do my best work when it's not 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, when I'm outside. Everyone works differently.
Yeah. You're given that freedom, and there's nothing. I mean, I have my youngest is at ASU, and he wants to go into urban development, and I tell him, great, go pursue that, but do something, have something else in your pocket that's going to fuel, you in a different way.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting because when you're doing something you love, it doesn't feel like work.
oh yeah, right.
Like, so just to kind of give you a quick story, my job that I have now, which I sell insurance, but I also am a software developer and like AI automation, like, wizard.
Yeah.
And my company that I'm at, the owner was like, we want to do all this AI stuff. Didn't know I could do it. How about we just have you do like AI and software stuff like all the time right now? And I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I go in my little corner and I'm just like coding away and doing stuff. And they're like, where's Matt? Oh, he's in the corner.
Yeah.
They're doing this thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
In heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before you know it, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. And
Yeah.
like, it's when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like
It's a
work.
whole different frame of mind.
Yeah.
You wake up differently. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
strange. I like it. And I'm
Yeah.
glad people are able to kind of go in that direction.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we look at taking big risks, I mean, it always comes with a little bit of pressure. So like what were the stakes for you? Like looking at it personally and professionally, like if this didn't work out, like what were you looking at?
Well, I mean, I guess the bold move that I made was leaving corporate. We were a 2-income family. We needed 2 incomes, and we were raising 2 kids. And luckily, my husband had a pretty good, steady job, but we still needed, my income. And so, that was the bold move, was to leave that. And what was at stake was financially. We took a hard hit. We took a hard hit. And, we got caught up in the '08 thing, and you know what happened then, right? So we had huge loss, right, with our property, and we had to restructure our lives. But if I wouldn't have made that decision, if we wouldn't have made that decision to do that, I think our family would have suffered in the long run, and on so many levels, and then I wouldn't be where I'm at today, or starting what I'm doing today. I'd still be stuck over there, just being in an office.
Yeah.
You
The '08, that did you ever see the movie The Big Short?
No.
So the movie The Big Short is really interesting. So it has Christian Bale, Batman, and he's kind of like this, he has, I think he's portraying somebody with autism and very into numbers and just can kind of like see patterns. And so he's like really good at like identifying trends.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has Steve Carell in it, and I think there's some other people I can't recall, but those are the 2 big guys. And they kind of go through the development of the '08 bubble and like leading up to it and everything. And it's very interesting because in 2007, I worked as a loan officer, and I just started working as a loan officer, so I didn't really know much about it. And I remember going to this one company, and they were just like cowboys. They were like, oh yeah, sell them this option arm, and the bank will pay us like 5 to 8%. And I'm like, what? And they were just making hand over fist. And it was so interesting because I knew nothing about mortgages. This was like the very first company. And they were telling me like, oh yeah, just say they make X amount of money. And I'm like, what? And here I am. I'm like, what is going on? And I went out and bought a book. I bought a book on like loan origination, because I was like, something don't feel right.
Yeah.
And I was like reading up on it, and I was like asking all these questions to my manager, because I'm like, well, the book says this, and like, why are we doing this? And I asked too many questions. They fired me. So I'm like, oh, okay. I was asking the right questions, you know what I mean? And they were not doing things the right way. But it was just funny because, people like, I remember this one guy, he had like a really nice car. I don't know what kind of car it was. And the license plate, I said like, screw Section 8 or something like that. And I'm like, and I think that was like one of the regulations or something. I don't know too many details about it, but about like lending and all this other stuff. And they were just basically defying the law, and no one was doing anything about it, which is so, it's mind boggling now. But back then it was like, people like, and I remember towards the end, I was actually working for a legit company, and I was trying to help people get out of these loans. And I would talk to people and go over like their statements and showing like, look, you're on this interest only thing for like a couple of years now, but next year your payment's going up like 5 times because now you owe principal. And they're like, huh?
Yeah.
They're so confused. I had no clue.
Yeah.
It's just amazing too. I think though now the education level on mortgages is way up.
Yeah.
Which needs to be there.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
the licensing happened, which wasn't a thing back then, which is like really good because now loan officers like know about the products.
Yeah.
I go on and on for hours.
Yeah, no. It just, it was the perfect storm that happened with us, making that decision and then that being right there, about to happen, So it definitely was, it was a huge loss, that we encountered.
Yeah. But, I think the industry is better for it, though.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that came
yeah.
out that made it. Because now, like, when I talk to a loan officer, I know that they're not going to try to be all slimy. Because back then, you couldn't tell. Like, there were loan officers, you're like, what, is this guy, like, legit? Because they would just, like, fill out an application, take your money.
Yeah, it was a Wild West. Yeah, it was.
So weird thinking about it now. But that's crazy. Yeah. Just kind of want to zoom in a second on that like exact moment, like you took that jump. So like, where were you? Like what was happening? I know you mentioned like the car and stuff, but was there another point where, you were like in your zone, like something was happening, and like, what were you feeling in that moment? Like when you decided, yes, I'm doing this.
So I was feeling, I was feeling really stuck, I just despair, just like didn't have a lot of hope. Like, where are we going? Like, there has to be more. There has to be more out there. Like, I gotta feel some happy inside me. This cannot be how it's meant to be. I just knew that there needed to be more that would bring me joy, because I knew that if I had joy, that's gonna just radiate to those around me. And so I think that was my biggest thing. It's like, find what makes you happy, and I knew that wasn't making me happy, but it took a minute to find what made me happy. I had to kind of test the waters out there.
Like, were you afraid, or were you like, gosh, what if this doesn't work out? Or you were like, you know what, this is going to happen. I'm just going to trust it's going to happen. Like, what was going through your
Back then, I was afraid, but I'm a very impulsive person. I'm a very impulsive person, and I just kind of like go. But I was afraid, but I also, I was raised to suck it up.
Yeah.
Don't show the emotion, just suck it up and go. And that's what I did, and I think both my husband and I were afraid, but what we found was, oh, there's some joy on the other side. This is good, but absolutely. Back then I was afraid, thinking like, I'm leaving this sure thing, insurance, steady paycheck, 401k, I'm leaving this for what? To pursue, I don't know what, but yeah, definitely. There was definitely fear.
Funny. I was in the walk it off era. My dad was like, walk it off, you'll be fine.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
it's like, are you okay? Like, do you need anything? Like, so different. Like, this is kind of funny. So like everyone, I would say, I mean, myself included, sometimes we just kind of like just hit a brick wall, when we're like trying to make progress. Was there any like low moments, or like basically anything that just kind of was a roadblock for you, and how did it impact the way you saw yourself or the path that you were on? Like, did it change anything, or did it do anything to you, spark something? Like,
so like the first thing I dove into when I left the corporate world was, I knew that I wanted to create something, and I knew that I wanted to serve somehow. And so I mean, this is kind of hokey, but I had like this this hobby of like scrapbooking, and the girls would get together like on a whole weekend. We'd take all of our supplies, and it was just like this bomb went off of scrapbooking supplies. And so we were sitting there one day, and I just started kind of putzing around and developing this little piece. And my girlfriend said, "Why, can you make one of those for me?" I said, "Sure. Yeah, I'll make one." And she wanted to pay me. I'm like, "No, just..." So then I thought, okay, maybe I can make a little business out of this crafting thing. And so again, I jump into whatever, and my husband's my biggest supporter. He just will 100% support me. So we kind of had things up and running, and we're actually doing subway art.
Wow.
And we had a really nice thing going with it, and we were working so much. We had put some time and money, and some blood and sweat into it. And then that fun, wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, well, wait, I thought you wanted this. What is this all about? Now you don't want this? And now it's not only me, now it's my husband, and we have invested in, some equipment and, and the whole thing. So yeah, I hit a roadblock, and I'm like, dang, what am I supposed to do? This is not it. This is not it. So that was a little defeating because, there's something bigger, but you're trying to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And was it a failure? No, because I left there with people still wanting it. I just didn't want it.
So what exactly was it that you were creating?
So it was subway art. So kind of like what you see at Hobby Lobby.
Okay.
It's art with quotes on it, but we were customizing them. And then it was actual real wood and real hand painting versus like, now you can get it at Hobby Lobby for like $6, and it's all mass produced, So we were creating like custom subway art, made out of like, nice wood frames and customized whatever they wanted on there.
Wow. What kind of material, or not material, like equipment did you have to invest in?
Oh gosh, I felt pretty powerful because I was using like these table saws. and sanders and so we had to invest in some of that stuff my husband already had, because just for his little play hobby stuff that he would do. But we invested in some equipment, and then of course supplies, a lot of wood and paints and things like that.
So were you like selling these like on Etsy or something?
Yeah. It was when Etsy came around, and then and then I like created some products like for kids, for parents to help their kids get into a habit of doing chores. And so I had this little block called the chore stick block. And we were selling those left and right, It was just like, they had little sticks, and you would put the chores on the little sticks, and the kids love that, right? Especially, you could see like our special needs kids, they love visuals, and they love to like see that accomplishment happen. Oh, they would take a stick. This is the chore. Now I put it in the done little hole of the block, So we were doing a lot of those on Etsy, but it was a lot of work.
Because you have to create all of this after the fact.
Yeah. And it was all custom. It was all custom, like their colors and whatever their chores were that they wanted, that was specific to their family,
Do you ever see those videos on TikTok where people show like their business, and they're like, they got their garage full of stuff, and then they're printing labels, and they're like, stacking up stuff very quick. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do all that.
Yeah.
Like, it was interesting because I got into Etsy a little bit. Have you, because you're really good at Canva, aren't you?
Yeah, I love Canva.
Have you ever thought about throwing up like Canva templates on there?
Yeah, but what's developing for me, Matt, is that I like a relationship with a person, so like whether it's like this live one-on-one, and then we'll go into it a little later with this new venture that we're doing. It's all live. They could see me, I can't see them, but there's so much power
Yeah.
in that video.
Well, I'm not like talking about like doing a full-time thing. I'm like, what's interesting here, I'll show you what I did. So I used Canva like all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was creating like a little certificate for like an LLC, because I wanted, like, I was having like a multi-member LLC, and I was like, oh, I'll make a little certificate. And I couldn't find one. I was like, oh, why can't I find one? So I just made one in Canva.
Yeah.
And then I saw some TikTok video about like, oh, just throw some templates up there, whatever. I'm like, what the heck? So I created it, and I put a little PDF where they can share the thing, and I threw it up there. Had AI create like a really nice description, like
Yeah.
just some ChatGPT, like threw it up. And then like, I don't know when it was. I think it was after I started posting like my podcast stuff, like my videos and everything. Then I started getting like sales, and it was really weird. And not a lot. I'm not saying even rich, but like every day, like maybe like one or two here, like I'll wake up and I'll see like, oh, so and so bought a thing, and it's like I sell them for like $3,
Yeah.
or like $5 here, and I was like, that's weird. And then it was like becoming more and more. So like every day I was like seeing like $3. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well that's cool,
Yeah.
And then you look at you go into the account, and it adds up,
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? But I'm not gonna get rich off of it.
Yeah.
But it was just funny because it was something I was doing
You were
anyway
creating, yeah.
that I needed, and I was just like, I'll just throw it up there,
Yeah.
And then I created a little mini website for Canva, like a Canva website. You can create little
Yeah.
templates, and I threw that up there, and like some people were buying it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm not like devoting the time to like just purely create Canva templates, which
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure that you could do it and just totally get the thing. I'm
Yeah.
using it more as just kind of like, hey, if it gives me a few bucks here or there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a place with like our second business where that can be incorporated, because there is a lot up here
Mm-hmm.
that needs to come out, and I think, with our second business, I think there's a definite place where that will fit in, because I do like creating.
Yeah.
I do like creating, but I also love that social interaction.
Yeah.
And empowering people and inspiring them. And that could be done in a lot of different ways.
So what are the businesses that you're in and that you're doing?
So our first business we've had for almost 10 and a half years, and I partnered up with a health and wellness company. And we found this health and wellness company because we were looking specifically for some premium, good, clean, science-backed nutrition for our son on the spectrum. And when I found the company, Isagenix, they just hit all the marks for me. Everything, it was simple, it was natural, but most importantly, it was proven. There was like real science, real studies behind it. And so, and I knew with autism, right, my son had like gut issues, and I knew he needed really good nutrition for that, and just to help like his cognition, needed good, clean protein. And if you see in the States how they process like our cattle, it's very alarming. And so, Isagenix just did it differently. And so I started him on that nutrition, and we started noticing some changes. And I've always tested whatever he's taken. I've always, also like anything natural,
Yeah.
that I can. And so then we just started seeing results with it, and we were like, oh my goodness, so as a family, we got on this nutrition. And then of course you can't keep something good to yourself. So we had to share it with others, because, there's so much bad health out there, and people are suffering in silence, and so we then dove in, just serving and helping people and trying to spread the word, and how easy you could just like bridge those nutritional gaps very easily. And then 10 and a half years later, here we are, and it's been, we've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and it's been such a joy, to see, just to be a little part of their journey, right? Because it's ultimately them that has to make the decision to do this, but we're just the catalyst for it, and helping them and supporting them and giving them hope. And so we've been doing that. And then, of course, start feeling like there's something more. I need something more. I need to bridge a gap. I need to bring this together with something else. I love fashion. I love clothes. I love shopping. What woman doesn't, right? And you do too. And with our health and wellness, I built that business on social media. So I've been in training in social media for 10 and a half years. I have no problem speaking to myself, on Instagram stories or wherever, And so in October, we launched Silva Lining. And it's funny because I've been using that hashtag for probably 12 years and I didn't know what it was for. I just liked the what it represented. Silva being our last name and then lining. And so it's like, like silver lining, Silva Lining. We just, like I spoke about earlier with our son, we had so many lessons and I've learned to always see the positive in things. Even when it's bad, you just try to grab one little positive thing because you can build on that.
Yeah.
And so in October, I had been talking to my younger son already about he brought it to me about doing a reselling business. And I told him, well, it has to be easy. It has to, like, all the logistical parts, all that stuff. I cannot do it from point A to point Z. I have to have something that helps me with that, with like the shipping, the billing, and all of that stuff, right? And so then in October of last year, a friend introduced me to an app that's out there that does all of that for you. All I got to do is have the inventory, have the personality, and be able to come on live and connect with the audience. And so we launched that in October, and it just I did not think it was going to go as well as it did so quickly. So we closed up our first solid quarter, like January to March, and I was just kind of flabbergasted of the numbers that we did. And so what that is, it's a live reselling platform. And so I come on there with my product and I am showing people, I could focus on women's apparel, from clothing to bathing suits. I could do jewelry, shoes. But what's happening in that process is you're building community with these ladies. And Matt, I will have people on there. Like, a lot of my client base is from the East Coast. So we're in Arizona. If I'm on at 11 o'clock at night here in Arizona, what time is it in the East Coast? These ladies are tuning in to me.
Wow.
We're building community. We're building community in there and just enjoying our time together, and I it's so important to be seen and heard, and there's power in somebody like referring to you by your first name, and when these people show up on this app, they have a username. But when I process their orders, I could see their first name. So I make it a point to remember these ladies' first name and then really just connect with them and remember the little things that they tell me about themselves. They share things about themselves, about their family. They'll send me photos of their grandkids through the messenger area in that app. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to get them to connect with me outside of that app on Instagram. And then that way they could see the bigger picture of what I do, and that's really just serving, like just filling those health gaps, those financial gaps that people have, and just inspiring them, to, a better life, better wellness, so they don't have to feel like I felt back in, 07, 08, like despair.
Yeah.
What's out there?
What's that app called?
It's called What Not.
What Not?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Can you kind of walk me through what that looks like? You have the app set up, and then you're interacting
Yeah.
with these
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
then they're buying. Like I
Yeah. So I have some techie equipment, not quite like what you have here set up. So what that looks like on the equipment side of things, I use my phone as my camera. That's actually given the live feed, my camera. Then I have an iPad, and then I have a computer. So I'm using 3 devices. And so it's on like they could see me. It's a video. They can see me. I cannot see them. All I can see is their comments on the chat. But what's so cool about that is that interaction happening as I'm selling, as I'm showing the garment and pointing out the points of the garment and the size and the color and giving them tips on like, oh, you can wear it this way or you can do this. I'm interacting with them. They're chatting with me. And so, and then I'm playing music, and I might be doing a little jig or something, just having fun with them because I want to give them an experience, And so there's a lot of things happening in that process. My husband said, well, that looks really easy to do, Liz. I could do that. I'm like, oh, once you get here, you're on camera. You have to have personality. You have to run the garment. You have to run the bid button. You got to see, what's happening in the chat. It's a chat. It's an open app. So sometimes you could get some weird people that find it fun to go in and create havoc.
Yeah.
So you got to monitor that stuff, And so, but yeah, again, they could see me as I'm doing everything. I can't see them, but it's so powerful what happens there. I mean, the power of a word, it's just I feel like I could hear them, like I could see them. We just start developing this relationship through that. And then they could message me within the app. So they'll share with me like a picture of their grandbaby, because we're talking about their grandbaby there on the chat. And they're like, oh, Liz, I'm going to send you a picture of the grandbaby. Or Liz, this is the little piece that I bought for my grandbaby. Look at how cute they look, And so there's that interaction like that within the app. And of course, like my ultimate goal is to get them into my other platforms so they could see the bigger scope of what I do. I'm serving them on that end with affordable clothing, with with building community, but I also, want them to see the other things that we have to offer, So, because Instagram, I do a lot of health related stuff, a lot of mindset, positivity, so I just bringing everything together.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, I'm having a blast with it. And these ladies, you know, I have so many repeat customers that just keep coming back, and because it's an experience that I'm creating for them. They're just resonating with me, and if I'm on in Arizona at 11 p.m. and I have somebody who's in New York at that time, I'm like, I honor that. I'm like, wow, they're finding value in this, so I'm going to give them the best that I can give them, because not only are they paying, right, for an item that they want to purchase from me, they're up at that hour with me. So I'm going to show up the best that I can and give them something to serve them, and they serve me just as much, I get just as much from them, so yeah, but it's really cool.
Well, you're riding the right trend.
Yeah.
Is that I know is expected to just blow up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll get to the point where China's at, but I mean, I'm pretty sure it will take off in its own right.
Yeah. We're excited about it, and we are very grateful and blessed,
That's cool. Was there, because everyone has like this turning point, was there like this breakthrough moment for you where, things just started to finally click? You're like, okay, we're going.
It definitely was during my time with Isagenix. Once I got over the fear, I don't know why there's fear. In order to serve somebody, you have to ask. You gotta ask. You gotta dig in to see what their needs are, and I don't know exactly when it happened. It might have been, I think it was probably 3, maybe 4 years into our health and wellness business when it just became less about me
Mm.
and more about what can I do for you? How can I help you? There was a lot of personal development that had to happen along the way,
Yeah.
to not, to, get rid of the money mindset issues and, just like, oh, I'm embarrassed to pry or ask and so along the way, it just became, my heart just started feeling like the pain that our society was in, with health and seeing that it was starting much earlier with our younger generation, and if you could change a parent's habit, just a little thing that they incorporate every day, now you can get the kids on board. Because I saw it happen with my own family,
Mm-hmm.
where I mean, it started with me and my son, and now this is such a big part of our life, is just incorporating nutritional products every day. But yeah, it definitely, once I got comfortable with me, then I just let me out the door, and then it just became, how can I serve you? I love listening to people, like, just sit down with me, tell me your story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like candy to me. I just want to know about you because there's so much,
Yeah.
so many directions that you can go with a person, and so it's just that service piece,
Yeah.
giving back.
I think that's also reinforced in BNI,
Yeah,
the whole giver's gain
absolutely.
mentality, which
Yeah.
is so true, like if you do what you can to try to help other people, it comes around,
It does.
but that's really cool.
Yeah.
Staying in it takes a lot of like grit, like was there, what was it that just kind of kept you going through like the toughest times, like whenever you would hit roadblocks or you would hit challenges, like, because a lot of times we just kind of want to throw in the towel.
Oh, yeah.
What just kind of kept you going?
Oh, yeah. Gosh. Well, you know what? I mean, for sure, God, I'm a faith-based person. Our family is, and I know that God did not put me here
Mhm.
to play small.
Yeah.
He put me here to make an impact. And then having my husband's support, like whenever I bring something to him, he's like a yes person. Let's go.
Mm.
Let's do it. Um, But definitely, I mean, I've had those wall kicking moments. It's like, oh man, I suck. Who do I think I am? Who do you think you are? To do this. And but I am, I'm Hispanic. I'm a little rebellious. And so I just have that built in me. I think my parents just, see my dad, he was an immigrant. He came here at 15 and seeing how hard he worked for his family and doing everything he could. Like that was perseverance, and so that's what I have in me. I just persevere no matter what. If I get kicked down, if, I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of no's in our health and wellness industry. I got a lot of naysayers, but I'm like, okay, next.
Yeah.
And my skin got thick, and I just, and always knowing that God put me here for a bigger purpose. What is it, Liz? How, you cannot stop. Whatever it is that you do, you cannot stop. So, but yeah, definitely have had those wall kicking moments. And then, so I'll tap into my faith, and then I do a lot of personal development. I read from, just people that are going to give me that, like I like reading Tony Robbins because
Yeah.
he just fires me up. He's just a brilliant businessman and
Yeah.
just, has come from such a hard place in life, And so definitely my faith, and then just, constantly personal development.
Nice. Just curious, what church do you go to?
We go to 2911 on Warner and McClintock. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I go to Arizona Community Church, which is
ACC?
which is
Yeah.
on Rural and Warner,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like right around the corner.
Yeah, yeah. This is another bold move that we made a little over a year ago. With our children, it's hard for them to go into mainstream Sunday schools, like my son got kicked out a few times. We can't handle him, and during that time, we had found a small community church called Hope Covenant, and our kids grew up there. It was just small and enough for them to just, to feel good and independent there. And we stayed there for many, many years and we loved it. But our young boys started to become men. Why? They started to become men. So we knew that they needed that community.
Yeah.
They needed a place where they can grow. And so that was a really hard decision to leave our church, Hope.
Yeah.
And then how 2911 came into our lives, it was really divine, and we were meant to be there. I don't think things happen by accident at all.
Yeah.
And how we landed there was like, wow, I see what you were doing in the background, God. I see this work. And so we're there now for a little over a year. And it was scary. But again, like we got over that and then we see the positives coming out of it, and our young men now have a place where they can grow and get mentorship and just develop as young men, in that type of setting,
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so we're like they're pretty much right next to it.
Yeah,
next door.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
If you could sit down with a version of yourself from the past, right before, you were gonna like take your leap of faith, what would you say to that past version of you?
I would say, Liz, eyes forward, block out the noise, because there will always be people who have an opinion and it's not necessarily in your best interest. Eyes forward and just go. Just go. Because I think action is either going to yield results or it's going to yield lessons. So, yeah.
When we look at bold moves that we take, it often reshapes how we define what winning looks like, what success looks like. So how has your definition of success changed because of this journey that you've been on?
That's such a good question. I thought success was money. I mean, money's nice, we need it. But my success, I define success in the relationships that I built along the way, like real meaningful relationships. And I think you could cross these digital boundaries that we have, like that could happen. You don't have to see somebody like we're sitting here, one face to face. There's so much power in, the technology that we have now to just really like reach beyond borders.
Yeah.
And you could make such an impact on somebody with the spoken word that you could just change their life, improve it, or maybe stop them from maybe they're in despair and they're at their last hope of however they're feeling. That could pivot, that could change. That's so powerful. To me, that's success, when you can have an impact on a human like that.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what we're here for.
It's so interesting because I've been in sales like pretty much my entire life. But it's funny because in my 20s and even most of my 30s, like I never really understood the emphasis on relationships. Like I was always in jobs where, yeah, I guess I could have built relationships, but it didn't click with me. And I kind of blame that on like, my ADHD and autism. Because like, you're kind of, a few years behind the rest of the pack in a manner of speaking.
Mhm.
Like I have always noticed, like I'm always, just a little bit, like 7 years maybe is probably like that number. And I think, and I catch up with the rest of my peer group. But it's funny because it wasn't until like late 30s, early 40s where you're kind of like, oh, and it kind of clicks. And you really start, at least I know I really started to value the external relationships. You know what I mean? Like the relationships outside of like your family, like
Yeah.
there's a whole network out there,
Yeah.
and it is so powerful.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it does change lives. I mean, just the relationships that I've been connected with have already changed my life,
Yeah.
and they're going to continue.
Yeah.
And I just wish more people could understand the effect. And
Yeah.
if you really just put the energy into it, like it can make a really big difference.
Yeah.
It's just strange.
If you can, I mean, people like introverts, it's a hard thing, and I can remember I have this one episode that I always have in my head of my younger son. I think he must have been he was in elementary, so he was probably like 8 years old. And we had just kind of moved into the neighborhood, and all the neighborhood kids were playing out there. They were playing football, and he was looking out the window. And I said, "Go out there." He's like, "No, I can't." He physically could not go out there. Like it was anxiety, just he could not. And I pushed him. I pushed him to go out there, and he went. Oh, and then he had a blast. He had a blast, right? But he had to push himself through that and make that jump, and then beautiful things happened. He had a good football game, and he made friends, and so I think, and so looking at, like as an adult, if you can push yourself to get out there, get into a networking group, go do something social, you're going to find the joy in being around people and getting to know people. Like it, and I wasn't always this way. Like my husband, I think, was born that way. He's a people person. And I would look at him and I'd be like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Like we'd get home from a party and my face hurt from the fake smile.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how do you do that? Well, I get it now. I found the joy in people, good people.
Yeah. That's the key. Cause I was telling you earlier, you can tell when somebody's motives are really not aligned. And that's where I've learned to really trust my gut instinct.
Yeah.
Because there are times when my gut says one thing, and especially when I was younger, I'd be like, no. And
right.
Bam, I get slapped in the face.
Yeah.
And now every time my gut says something, I'm like giving it more weight, more emphasis. And it's so funny. Me and my wife talk about this all the time, because the gut instinct is usually more times than not more correct.
Right. And it's so funny. That's just always been like a saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trust your gut, trust your gut. But what like they're finding the gut is like really your
Holy Spirit.
Brain. Yeah. And it's your brain. It's the Holy Spirit. That's like the hub. That's the command station.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's very interesting. We can get up on a whole.
I know.
Oh goodness. So just kind of quickly talking about what ifs, like would having a safety net like insurance or a backup plan, would that have changed your whole approach on taking your leap that you've made?
If I had a backup plan, probably not, because my impulsivity serves me well. Sometimes I don't think of maybe my husband is my safety. because, he's there to support me,
Mm-hmm.
and he has the job, so if I was a single mom and doing this, it would definitely be harder putting out the money that I've put out for this second business.
Yeah.
I would like, ugh, I gotta wire that much money, like, so yeah, I guess, if I think in those terms, my husband is my safety net. It helps when you're not doing something alone, that it gives you a little assurance, but still, I mean, there's some scary moves that I have to make still, and I have to kind of push him like, nope, we're doing this. This is how we're going to scale. And yep, I'm writing that big check, hun. We'll get, it's going to come back in many ways,
Yeah.
so.
So, because I think you kind of touched on it. So, like, what's the next big, bold move for you? And are you still a little afraid to take it? And, if you are, like, what's holding you back?
The next big, bold move is definitely centered around Silva Lining, the reselling, just definitely, scaling that, developing some bigger relationships with suppliers, and that requires more bigger money. And am I scared? No. I don't think I might have little moments of like, "Ugh," my heart, but then I'm like, "Ugh, just go."
Yeah.
I've learned to make friends with fear, because it's just a feeling. It's a temporary feeling. And I know that if I make friends with it, and if I can just jump over her, there's so much good that's going to be on that other side. And if it doesn't work out, there's going to be a lesson, a lesson. It's going to, then I'll pivot and do something else, So yeah, I don't really fear it. It's exciting to me.
Yeah.
It just like fills me in a whole different way. I'm like, ooh, what, what's on that other side? Let's go check it out.
Awesome. All right. So I've got some quick fire questions for you here. So what is your favorite book, podcast, or resource that just ultimately inspires you to be bold?
That's hard because I have so many books. I love this might be weird, but I do love like podcasts around finances, because I think there's so many lessons in that, right? Because you kind of have to just, when you're thinking about your finances and investing, you have to just go, do, and let it be. And so that's kind of the approach that I use with some of the things that I do also, is just go, do, and then let it be. Let it rest, let it see. So I kind of get those lessons like from financial podcasts and like books. Like I've read Tony Robbins' finance books, and then I listen to some financial podcasts. But I also, the one book that really made an impact on me this last year was the one by Ed Milet, One More. One more. Just one more, right? And so when you think you can't do something, try it one more time. When that person said no, let's get one more person. Let's try one more person, So that just, to me, then I think of that, it's like just break it down in little pieces. If you look at this big thing, of course it's going to be overwhelming, but if you kind of look at it in chunk bite sizes, it's kind of like somebody once told me, how do you eat an elephant? I'm like, what? You don't. What do you mean, how to eat an elephant? I'm like, is this a trick question? I don't have time for this. One bite at a time, so yeah, so Ed Milet's One More. And then I love the energy bus. I love the energy bus because I think if you could, it's all about positivity, your outlook. I think it starts there. If you wake up in the morning and you already have a crappy attitude, you're going to have a crappy day. But if you wake up in the morning and you're like, who can I serve? Who can I meet today? Who can I just give something back to?
Yeah.
You're going to have a great day. You're going to have an amazing day.
That's
You know,
true.
you just will, you know, and that's one thing, like the last 10 years. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Hmm.
You know?
Just piggybacking off of what you said there a little bit. So I like listening and following. Have you ever heard of Vanessa Van Edwards? I think it is. She is a really good speaker on like body language and charisma and all this other stuff. But she was saying that a lot of the like most successful people, when they, or the most liked people, when they like see people, they're always giving them a really big introduction, like a really big welcome. Like if you were to walk in, you're like, "Hey Liz, how's it going? It's like so great to see you." You know, like not fake, but like very big.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because on the flip side, that person feels more like welcomed.
Yeah.
And I guess she was saying like, you know, if you do that a few times, then it like mentally puts this connection where that person sees you as a very positive and welcoming person. And it kind of just like creates this bond.
Yeah.
And so it was just interesting. There's a lot of other stuff that she says, but it was just fascinating because like I think back to times where people have greeted me that way, and you really do feel special. You're like, oh wow, you know. It's just interesting.
You feel valued and seen, and that you matter, you know, and that's why like I go that extra mile in with Silva Lining on the Whatnot app to learn these ladies' names.
Yes.
It's a difficult thing because my memory is not very good, you know, and I know there's so much power when you address somebody by their first name and in the greeting.
It is weird.
Yeah.
Like I'm a visual person, so faces I recognize, names is really difficult for me.
Yeah.
But there is like when you say somebody's name, and it's so weird because for me it used to feel weird like to do that.
Yeah.
But on the again, putting yourself in the opposite place, it's received like very differently, and you're like, oh, well, interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, no, that's so strange. Yeah, I was just thinking like when you come into like an office or work, and like when you're a manager or somebody, when they're just like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" You kind of like feel like, okay, but when they're like, "Hey," you know, you feel like, okay, let's get to it, you know.
And it's okay if sometimes I'm a little bit much for people, and I'm okay with that. Because it might take them a couple of times to be around me, and then it's like, oh, okay, and then their little, you know, other side starts coming out, and it gives them freedom to express, you know. So I'm okay if they think I'm a little cray-cray.
Well, I always think about when I do acting, because like I used to do a lot of acting. I'm still trying to get back into it, but so when you were overdoing things a lot of times, in my mind, especially like this is for like theater stuff, you think you're overdoing it, but from the audience perspective, like you're not. Like it's very normal. And so I was doing some theater stuff for my church, and you know, I was like doing some, for me, I was thinking I was over exaggerating this and that, and then you look at the playback, you're like, oh, that looks pretty
good.
Pretty
I
normal.
could have went a little more. Yeah.
But on the flip side, when you see somebody who's just kind of like just thinking they're doing it normal or whatever, it looks so dull and boring. And it's so just on the other side, you just kind of like bring it down a notch for them, because it's not as cray as you probably think it is.
Yeah. Oh no, and that's why, like with the reselling, I just you know, I when I run clothing, I bring my disco, my Casey and the Sunshine Band, and the Bee Gees and Donna Summer out, and we just have fun, awesome. You know. And then I have the country, the Patsy Cline, the, you know, Loretta Lynn days. You know, it's just it's what you create, you know. And when you can create that, when you greet somebody, there's so much power in that. You know, so much.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't worry about what people think about you.
So true.
Don't worry about what people think about you. You know, as long as you could put your head down at night and say, good job. That's what matters.
In one word, how would you encourage someone to be bolder today?
In one word. Oh man. Well, it's funny. The word is expand. I pick a word of the year every year, and ironically, that was my word that I picked last January before we launched the second business. It's expand. You know, if you can expand like things with your business, your heart, your mind, you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So it's been awesome for you sharing your story. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Best place is the central hub is my Instagram, Silva_Lining. And that's my Instagram. And in there, I have a link that just will take you wherever you need to, you know, whatever you need. You know, there's inspiration and you have the links to go to health or, you know, purchasing, selling, or, you know, just everything's there. I kind of keep it all there. So Silva_Lining on
Very
Instagram.
Cool. And we'll also have a special guest page for you on the Bold News Podcast website, which is boldnewspodcastaz.com. But all your links will be on there. You'll have a little bio, a little headshot. So if anyone forgets how to get a hold of you, they can always go there. That will be on there.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, this has been a phenomenal episode. I'm really glad we got to spend some time together, catch up, and kind of share your journey. But this has been the Bold Moves Podcast. And until next time, we out.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Bold Moves with Matt Torres, where we celebrate Arizona's fiercest innovators, risk takers, and dreamers. We hope this episode sparked fresh ideas and fueled your courage to take action. Remember, real change begins with that first brave step. Stay connected for behind-the-scenes insights, exclusive episodes, and community updates. Follow us on social media to share your journey. For more inspiration, resources, and connections, visit boldmovespodcastaz.com. Until next time, keep daring, keep dreaming, and keep making bold moves wherever you are.